Hey guys, this is Gerry O reporting for Kids First. Right now we're with Maureen Fan, who is the CEO and founder of Baobab Studios. How are you doing today?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So, something I did not mention about the studio is that it is an animation studio that specializes in brand new mediums that are interactive, like virtual reality, augmented reality, and I find that so cool. So, my first question is could you talk a little bit about your path from the very beginning in college all the way to today when you are doing this very specialized job?
Absolutely. So I started off, I went to Stanford and I knew I wanted to do animation, but there's no such animation major at Stanford. So I ended up designing my own major, which is computer science, art, and psychology. Don't deal well with just following rules. And that ended up being a theme throughout my career. I remember I was very stressed out in college, feeling like I needed to know exactly what I want to do. But I found a meandering path. And my teacher at Stanford gave me this great advice. She said, it doesn't matter what you do as long as you do it really well, because if you work really hard and have great work ethic, then the people who are at your job will recognize your work ethic. And later on, whenever it is that you figure out what it is that you want to do, they'll come out of the woodworks to help you. And I found that to be absolutely true. So I ended up going to eBay first. The truth is, I wanted to go to Lucasfilm animation because that was my dream to do animation. But my parents are immigrant Asian parents, and they told me I'd be poor and destitute if I followed my dreams. So instead, and forbade it. So instead, I went to eBay. I started off as UI designer, then culture anthropologist, where my job was to live in different cultures and study culture and figure out how eBay should enter those markets, which was a great job, and ended up being a product manager there. But nights and weekends, I kept on taking animation classes because I just really loved it. And ultimately, after 5 years has passed, I thought, okay, I saved up enough money to be poor and destitute. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to go get an MFA. And I realized the deadlines had passed for getting a master's for that year. I didn't want to wait. And my mom said, you should apply for business school. The truth is, I really did not like business, but like a good daughter, I applied and I got in. And I was going to say no to going to business school because I really want to do film. And my boss at the time, Susan, she said, don't be an idiot. Don't say no to Harvard without trying it out first, trying out Hollywood. You just think it's sexy, but you don't know. So I ended up trying it out. I emailed everyone in the Stanford alumni database that had anything to do with animation, took on every internship I could, and realized that everything's a business at the end of the day. So ended up going to business school. And while I was there, I interned at Pixar and Toy Story 3 and ran the Entertainment Media Club. And then afterwards, I loved animation, but I really wanted to be part of an industry that was growing or starting rather than something very established. So I went to Zynga, right, when they started. And the Farmville franchise ended up becoming my franchise, and I stayed there for 5 or 6 years and left as vice president of games. And it was really fun working on games that were considered not just for these hardcore, like when you think of a gamer, it was opening up gaming to people of all ages and making it accessible to everybody, and that was really rewarding. And then I tried on a VR headset for the first time, and to be honest, I didn't love it. The first time I tried it, it was live action, and all I could notice was the pixels and the bad resolution because our standards for reality are really high. You know, we see things in high def. But when I put the headset on and saw animation, my game, there was nothing even moving. It was just an environment that was a cartoon background. I realized that this was the future of animation because animation is art in motion. It takes you to completely different worlds. It makes it feel so real that you think you can reach out and touch it. And that's also the definition of VR. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. And I knew I needed to leave immediately. And there weren't many places doing it at the time. I never thought I would be a CEO and never dreamed about being a CEO. It's not my personality to need to start something by myself, but I ended up starting this studio because I was really passionate about doing this. And so me and my co-founders, Eric Darnell, who wrote and directed all the Madagascar films, and also Antz, and also Larry Cutler, who is the head of all character technology at DreamWorks, banded together to start this company. And we started off in VR, but what we realized is it's not just VR that we love. It's really about making you matter inside the story. And if you can play a character, you are involved in the story, how much more invested will you be in what happens in the story? How much more will you care about the characters? And that was something really exciting to us. So we just explore all mediums that allow you to be part of the story.
Something that I love about your story before we talk about Baobab is that you didn't know initially what you wanted to do and you looked around. So, for the audience who may be struggling with that and trying to decide what to do, how could you describe the moments you knew this is what you want to do? What was the feeling that this is what I want to do, this is what I want to drive towards?
Yeah. Well, even in college, I didn't, I knew I wanted to do something in film. So I looked up on the websites for all the film studios, the background, like what majors, and they said like econ, comps. I took all those classes and they weren't that exciting to me. But when I took computer science, that was hard and I love a challenge. So that made me really excited. But I also took a psychology class and I liked that too. And I always liked art. And so I try to figure out what is something I could do that can bring together all these things that I love. And that's how I ended up determining that I was going to design my own major. But I remember when I took my first computer animation class at Stanford and we had to model something in Maya and bring it to life. I didn't want to go to sleep, right? I was just so excited about staying up to see that little thing come to life. And I never felt that excited. But I had always loved animation since I was young. It's just not something I knew was a job that I could do. I loved animation. To be totally honest, one of the reasons why I think I loved animation is I grew up in on the East Coast, and for my community, I was the only Asian person in my elementary school, and I remember being picked on a lot. And my family, my grandparents lived with me. They only spoke Chinese, and so I grew up in a very Asian household. So I didn't necessarily fit in, and I got picked on. I think animation was my escape. So I love to imagine I was in a different world. And so I think I just always loved it. And so when there was a chance to actually do that, when I watch animation, I feel invincible. I feel like I can do anything. It brings me back to that 5-year-old sense of self where you think everything is possible. And one of my great beliefs in life is that people have so much more potential than they realize, but something happens when you get older that makes you think that you have to conform to what society wants you to do. There's a set path. You have to fame, money, fortune, power. And when I watch animation, I remember that I don't have to follow all those rules. I don't have to do things the way everybody tells me. I can bring that 5-year-old self back out and do anything, and I can achieve anything. And so that's what animation does for me. But to be totally honest, half the time when I made decisions, I didn't know if it was the right choice, and I was very stressed out about it. But I just remembered my professor's advice. It doesn't matter. Somehow this experience, I'll learn from it. I'll learn if it's what I want, and I'll make connections and meet friends that will help me later on. And I would not be here today if I didn't have all those experiences. It seems like it was all over the place, but like my UI designer friends helped me design my website. They helped me create my pitch deck from when I was there. From being a culture anthropologist, I know how to talk to people and understand how to manage both creative people as well as, say, engineering and business people, because it takes different ways. But anthropology is all about being quiet and learning how to listen and asking the right questions, much of what you know how to do today. And then the business school, right, taught me how to deal with the hardcore business aspects, because oftentimes when you're in the creative industries, it can be you just want to follow your heart and just do art. And while I love that, there still needs to be, you still got to make money to survive. So having those skills are great too. So all of these experiences ended up helping me somehow.
Very well put, and it clearly has worked out. As Baobab has won multiple Emmys, you can see some of the awards behind us beautifully. You are also the producer of The Dam Keeper, an Academy Award nominated short film. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I also want to ask you that you are very young for such an accomplished CEO. What tips would you give to the kids? I know that connections were very important in the forming of Baobab, so could you talk a little bit about the importance of connections? What other tips you would give to kids who want to be one day as successful and as passionate about you?
Absolutely. So in terms of tips, it would be don't let people tell you you have to fit inside a bucket, whether it's you're the introvert, extrovert bucket, you're a creative or you're a suit, like a business person, you have to do this major. You imagine the way you want it to be, and then find a way to make that happen. And there will be people there to help you because they, one, are inspired by your passion, but also you're working hard in whatever it is that you're doing now. So it's not like, I just have a dream and I have no idea how to get there and I don't have the skills to get there. When you're working hard and doing whatever it is you're doing, whether it's being a janitor, whether it's, washing dishes, whatever it is that you're doing, being a waitress, if you are doing it well and they see that you have the work ethic to do it well, they will want to help you achieve your dreams. People in general, I believe, are nice and they want to help you achieve your dreams, especially if they like you. So my connections and my friends have been extremely helpful to me. For example, Glenn Entis, who you've spoken to, he was he's retired and he was consulting at Zynga as a creative consultant to help spread creativity around Zynga. When I realized that he was Glenn Entis, I immediately went up to him and said, "Will you be my mentor?" And he said, "I'm really busy. I'm not sure if I have time. You'll have to ask my wife." And I said, "I'm going to become best friends with your wife." And then I went up, it's like, just refused to say no. So then he became my mentor, and he's actually the one who introduced me to Eric Darnell, my co-founder. When I decided to start my company, I said, "Do you know any directors?" And it turns out that Eric is the second highest box office grossing animation writer director of all time. So Andrew Stanton is number one, Brad Bird is number three. So I really lucked out that because he hired Eric into PDI DreamWorks Animation. And then when I asked Glenn, "Can you introduce me to Ed Catmull? Because I would love for him to be advisor." He said, "No, there's going to be a Disney conflict of interest, but I can introduce you to Alvy Ray Smith, the other co-founder of Pixar, who helped invent the Alpha Channel, like transparency. Isn't that amazing?" And then afterwards, Alvy said, "Maureen, I don't like games and I don't believe in VR, so I don't think I'm the best person." And I said, just let me meet you. Just be persistent. And then after that happened, I put the headset on him and then he was sold. So be persistent. And then I asked him for advice for advisors. He introduced me to Glenn Keane, who's the most famous living animator out there. He animated Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, Little Mermaid, like all that. So he became our advisor too. So it's all through these connections. And then Tim Letourneau is another advisor, and he used to be the head of the Sims franchise, and he was my boss at Zynga. So he helped me too, as well as, and then Eric Darnell's executive producer for all the Madagascar films was Mireille Soria. Mm-hmm. And so he asked her. So it's all from people we knew. Even my first investor ended up being a product manager who was on Farmville, who became a venture capitalist. And he told his team of partners that, "I really believe in Maureen because I've worked with her and she's crazy. So I know she'll work really hard to make this happen." So it was all from all my entire career. Even my Stanford professors came out to help me. It's just all from keeping in touch with people and making sure that whatever it was I was doing, I gave it my all.
I think that's so true and so important, especially in the film industry. Connections are so important. And I also like what you said about there is no set career path. Now, we are running low on time, but I want to address what I think is very important, especially in this industry, that is a work and personal life balance. We are in your home right now instead of in an actual office. And what I like about that is that this is, your life. And how do you balance this life here at home with your passion project and work?
Well, I think being an entrepreneur is a great thing. And remember when I was saying, don't let people bucket you, choose your own path. Being an entrepreneur is a great way to do that because you don't have a boss. You can decide exactly the way you want to design your life, just the way you want to design your company. So being an entrepreneur, while very stressful at times because everything in a way, this sounds awful, but is your fault. Anything that happens bad is your fault at the company. So it's high stress, but it does mean that I get to design my life. So knowing that I think about my work 24/7, I wake up in the middle of the night like, oh my gosh, and I have to send out email. I don't feel guilty if I set my own hours because I know I'm working all the time anyway. So it allows me to be able to be more flexible with my schedule, which has been absolutely great. And if I have to, step out in the middle of the day to do something, I absolutely can. But then that also means that I can take meetings on the weekend if I want to, because I prefer to work sometimes on the weekends, and I can actually set up some appointments on the weekends. So being able to start your own company really gives you that ability. And I also think that having a very good outlet outside of work is also helpful, because the stress of being an entrepreneur can be very heavy. And I find that, especially if you're in the creative industry, right? If you're in the creative industry, you need to be creative. And to be creative, I do feel you have to let your mind make connections that it wouldn't normally. And if you're always thinking in one specific way, it prevents you from being able to be creative. So it's important to have other hobbies. For me, a lot of it is just walking in nature really helps me. And I know that Eric Darnell, my co-founder, gets his best ideas when he's on vacation. So I'm always like, please go on vacation, because he always comes back with amazing, brilliant new story ideas and new character ideas. So I think it's very important to have balance.
Definitely is. And like you just said with that example, stories don't come in isolation. They come from interacting with the world. So thank you so much for talking to us about your career and your experience. For our audience, make sure to check out their many wonderful, wonderful films that, in my opinion, are defining an entire new genre where video games, movies, and stories all combine in this beautiful, beautiful mixture. To check out our other many interviews where we talk to CEOs, where we talk to business leaders, where we talk to filmmakers, producers, so many different people on Kids First. I'm your host, Gerry O, reporting for Kids First. Bye.